Hey, how you doing, Doctor Evil?
Ah, life is good. I'm not usually up this early these days, but seeing as it's daylight savings time and everything.
They really like to do that, don't they? It's like they really ruin your sleeping schedule just so that daylight savings goes from one way to the other. And I guess that's probably ticking you off the high hell, isn't it, brother?
You know, we have a lot of things in this country like summer vacation for schools and um, daylight savings time that are based around kids having to get up to bring in the chickens.
Yeah, kind of archaic, for lack of a better word.
I don't know.
Well, today, my friend, we're going to be talking about a topic that you suggested, and I completely went to it. And it is actually something that, in respect, people have asked about, which is the fundamentals of magical tools. Um, there's, of course, it doesn't get more basic when you talk about magical tools. Then voila, right? The wand. Shout out to my friend Sigil giving me this nice almond wand. But the tools of a magician. Go way beyond just your standard magical wand. And before we even get on the record with it, Wade, I wanted to ask, well, what's the point? Can't we just draw sigils or like yell out barbarous words? So I want to hear it straight from you, brother. I mean, what do you think? Why do we even
We
need
we
magic
can.
tools?
Here's the thing. We can. You can also, if you have like the proper amount of force handy, you can disassemble a Formula One race car with your bare hands.
Yeah,
Yeah. But you know what? We have tools for that
true.
because it's a force multiplier. It makes your job easier. It makes your work more effective. It just, everything works out better because when we're incarnate in the meat suit, it's almost like there's a filter on, and most of our power is just lost in trying to get through the meat suit.
Hmm.
So, yeah, tools. Tools are a force multiplier.
Force multiplier at the same time, too. I like to say there's a perfect tool for the perfect scenario. Like,
Everything.
we're going to war.
I mean, a lot of people say, well, there's only four magical tools.
Yeah.
There's four lesser magical tools. There's four greater magical tools. Anything that you create that does a job that's not specific to one thing,
Hmm.
anything can be a magical tool.
Very true.
I built a small tower once, just out of individual clay bricks, and it was specifically for if there was someone who needed to be restrained or some force that needed to be stopped, anything that needed to be kind of just put in timeout for a while. Write it up, throw it in that little tower, put the lid back on, and it was. I didn't really have like a name for it because all it did was arrest progress in things.
So it's kind of like a suppressor of sorts, where it would suppress.
Exactly.
All right. Well,
Exactly. Like
here's the thing, though. Wait, sticking on topic. Um, there's a lot of controversy or a lot of discussion as to what the most essential magical tool is. I mean, a lot of people go off the bat. So you need the wand, right? But
it,
it really
it's
depends on what.
specific kind of wand.
Huh?
Uh, there's the fire wand that goes with like the set of four tools,
Mm-hmm.
but then there's your regular, what they used to refer to as a blasting wand.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's this one.
So basically,
It's
this is the lightsaber.
yeah, it's not because the fire wand is specifically for your will.
Mm-hmm.
For that, it's designed to work with the other ones. But my granddad was a blacksmith, and he used to like to tell me that the only tool a blacksmith can make without a hammer is a hammer.
Yeah.
And this is your hammer. This is the first thing that you make because what it does. Let me actually slide this back here a little bit. Okay. What it does is the way you use it, this jacks right into your palm chakra,
Mm-hmm.
and it basically focuses all of your juju coming out into a fine tip, and it kind of collects and directs all of your creative energy.
Like a
or
laser.
destructive energy or whatever it is you're doing.
So it's like a laser.
It's like a laser, exactly.
All right, but here's one thing I want to ask you. A lot of people tend to mistake the difference between the blasting wand and the staff. Now, from your take on that, what, because we still haven't answered what the most essential tool is, but since we're talking about
Oh,
the wand,
this
what would
one.
you say? What's
This
the
is
difference
the
between
most
the blasting
essential
wand
tool.
and the
This
staff?
is the one tool that you can use to make all the other tools
So you would,
more effectively.
so you would say it's the blasting wand, the wizard's wand, not the fire wand. Am I correct?
Correct.
Now, another thing, just going to go it out there on the record, guys. There could be wands for so many different reasons. That's a huge rabbit hole in itself. You can have a wand for your patron god or goddess. You can have your wand for evocations. You can have your holy guardian angel wand that's inscribed with holy names of God. So don't think that just because you have one wand, it's everything. But we're sticking to the
Correct.
logic between me and Wade that this is kind of like your lightsaber. The wand is what laser directs your will and your desires to whatever you're using it for. So Wade and I are kind of in agreement. Yeah, a good wand, a consecrated wand, is probably one of the most important tools you can have. But then going back to my question, how does this differ from the wizard's staff?
Now, if you use the four, to go back to the four tools model,
Mm-hmm.
if you use the if you use the smaller versions on your altar,
Mm-hmm.
there's also the greater versions of
Yeah.
them that you would use like in a full-size temple.
Okay.
So when you have your wand, your cup, your knife, and your disc, you would also have the staff, the sword, the cauldron, and the altar itself. Are
That dates back to
larger
the Golden
versions
Dawn
of
days,
that.
right?
What's that?
That dates back to like Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, right?
Yeah, correct. But the staff, the original staff, is really a larger version of your blasting wand. It's designed to be your walking stick. It holds you up. It's literally your backbone.
All right.
It's the thing you anchor yourself with.
So basically,
And
if
it's
you're
not so
saying
much that you're what's that?
if you're saying that the wand is like the lightsaber, the laser, would it be safe to say that the staff is like a bazooka?
Um the staff has a slightly different dynamic to it. It's not like it's directing all the like you don't hold it from one end and point through. It's more of a it's more like a conductor's baton. Like you would have, you would point, you would direct energy to things, not necessarily through the staff.
Mm-hmm.
You could also use it to almost like a lightning rod
Mm-hmm.
that you would draw energy down and anchor it to sort of manifest your will.
So
So
how
it's a
would
slightly different dynamic, but it's very much the same usage.
so like if you were to like to describe it, how would Wade Long use his staff in magic?
Mm. A lot of times I like to, in some rituals where you're supposed to knock or ring the bell specific number of times, I use the staff for that.
All right, I'm gonna turn off my camera for a bit because I'm gonna get my staff. I'd like to show it on camera, but you guys can still hear
Okay.
me. But what would you say are one of the most essential things to consider when creating or purchasing a staff?
I would not purchase one because you never really know, especially for like a tool that's that important.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't purchase one. I mean the last one that I made, I've made several of them.
Yeah.
The last one that I made, I just kind of walked around in the forest until I found there was like a sapling that was kind of like calling, getting my attention. So I went over to it and I had like just a strip of white cloth a couple feet long, and I wrapped it around it without tying it.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured I'm going to come back in 1 month, and if that is still there, then it has decided to come home with me. And it was, and it did. And I made a staff out of that.
In my case, I had this custom made. This was beautifully done. This is done in the name of my patron Anubis, and it's actually very tall, so it really does live up to the realm of the word staff. And you're right that when I've noticed that when, from my own personal perspective, when I really think that the walls are caving in and I really need to like ground myself and like make myself a fixed point, and I have to like fight off forces and keep myself anchored on who I am, kind of like make myself kind of like the center of the universe. The use of the staff is really second to none, more than anything, because it reminds you. That's why mine was made in the visage of Anubis. That there are more forces protecting you. There are more things behind you. That sometimes, as much as we call upon them, we are also pieces on their board. Hence,
Hmm.
when you're creating a staff, you could pretty much find a stick in the woods and have that carved. You can have some elaborately done, but at the end of the day, your staff is, like you said, a force multiplier of the power, where
Hmm.
it will remind you of who or what you are. So, with that
It's
being,
your tree of Yggdrasil that the branches go down,
mhm,
you know, under the earth, and the roots go down under the earth and the branches go up above the earth. To clarify what I was saying though, having one custom made is perfectly good. I was thinking when you asked about having one, having bought one, I thought you meant like going down to a Walmart in their Halloween
yeah,
section and buying something. That I wouldn't do that.
yeah, definitely don't do that, because this is too personal of a thing to just
But if
get
it's
from the.
custom made, that's perfect.
Yeah, because like this is too personal of a thing to be just gotten from the hockey aisle in the sporting goods store in Walmart or something like that. Which, weirdly enough, a lot of majors seem to like their staffs to start off as hockey sticks. Don't you? Did you ever hear about that? Those
Oh
hockey
yeah,
stick
that
majors?
was that the Dresden
Yeah,
Files.
Dresden Files, greatest occult fiction ever. All right, but the next thing I'm going to ask you is this, though. One viewer actually asked, "Is all this stuff necessary?"
Well, no, strictly speaking, it's not. It's not necessary, just like it's not necessary to have, you know, tools to fix your car, but it makes it so much easier
Mhm.
that there's no reason to not have them.
Great. Because let's talk about the next thing. So I agree with Wade on that. I won't reinvent the wheel. Like if you're going to war, it's not necessarily necessary that you bring a gun and a sword. But if you want to come
Yeah,
back, you might want
yeah,
to bring a lot more than that.
because the other guys are going to have them.
Have that stuff too. Yeah.
I
So
mean, yeah, you can do the full Rambo thing. You're like, oh no, I was released into the wild. I didn't even have a shirt. You know, like, well, okay, yeah, that's great for him, but you can improvise. But the first thing he did was improvise tools, clothes,
weapons too.
weapons,
Yeah.
all of that.
And sometimes, boys and girls, I'd like to let you know that it doesn't need to be as complicated as you think. Like if you have my book, The Tarot 78 for Spells for 78 Days, there's actually a ritual there that can link your physical tools to the wand, the cup, the pentacle, and the sword in the deck, so that the power of your actual tools can be represented through those cards. And if you don't have those actual tools in a pinch, those can be representations if you have a tarot deck. But it's really kind of like the importance you give to it. It's better to have a tarot card that says sword than to have no sword at all. Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's a. I mean, even the weakest tool is going to be better than no tool at all.
Yeah. So if you're wondering, I only have a fluffy sword that my son has. Can I use that as a ritual sword? Well, it won't be as meaningful as a fully iron forged blade by your ancestors. But as Lon would say in his books, a crappy tool is better than no tools, right? I think
Yeah.
we're both in agreement with that. Because I want to get to the next topic, or the next tool, which doesn't get much attention, and that's the dagger. Okay, you guys can see it.
Mhm.
There's the dagger. This is my dagger, given to me years ago by my niece Natalie, and I've held on to it dearly. It's very dear to me. And a lot of people talk about what the people tend to conflate the dagger and the sword. Haven't you had that happen? Like, oh, the dagger is what is the authority of the magician. But I've heard that no, actually, it's the sword. But people know that, of course, if you know anything about magic, this is in representation of the air element. Now, for you, Wade, what is the importance of the dagger in magical practice?
Well, for me, the dagger is a it's a two-edged sword. It's a it's a creative tool and a destructive tool at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It basically it creates by destroying, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say if you have a blank sheet of paper, which is sort of just what you're working with, and you take that dagger and you draw the shape of your work that you're trying to do, you've now created that specific item by separating it from everything else around it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like when you use it to cast your circle, you're literally cutting that part of the world away from the rest.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have like a contained space. Um, it defines. It's that now there's times that you don't want to define something. If you're
Mm-hmm.
familiar with the quantum wave function,
Yes.
sometimes you want to leave that fluid. You don't want to disrupt the quantum wave function until the absolute moment of truth, and then you have your dagger for that. So for casting your circle, for for actually like making some of your things. If you're going to make a set of runes, if you have like clay laid out and you're using your dagger to cut each one and then to cut each rune on it, it creates by defining, but it defines by destroying, by cutting it away from everything else that you don't want involved in it.
From my own experiences, Wade, what I've learned is very powerful with using the dagger. This is good for dealing with air magic or any kind of magic that has to do with the intellect or the mind. Very good with study, communication, because just like what you said, by creating, you destroy. So, example, when you form an opinion, okay, forming an opinion both creates the opinion, but it destroys your presence in the opposite. Think about that.
Right.
So if I said,
Yeah,
I
it
like
destroys the ambiguity.
yeah, I like blue. So I've already stated that into the world. So by default, I am not liking red. I'm not saying I dislike red, but I am not liking red because I said I like blue. And this is a very intellectual way of thinking, but it's the same thing when studying things. We call it Hegelian dialectics, where to learn one thing, to completely understand it, you also have to learn the opposite of it so that you can have the synthesis of the two. So when you are studying anything, any topic in the world, you are studying an immediate polarization. Okay, it's either one way or the other. So, like example, if you're going to study about leadership in America in the past 8 years, you can take it from the Democratic perspective and study that, or you can take it from the Republican perspective. But to start by reading one basically means now you've already defined your beginning of knowledge in one, that you have, and very, very much part of the sword. Now you have that moral, right to understand the other half. So if you're using the sword, this is very good when you're installing any kind of information into your head, because it makes the information a little bit more accessible. Don't you agree?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sounds good. What does Wade use his wand for? I mean, his sword for, or his dagger for, in any kind of magical aspect? Just curious with you.
Mostly for creating tools, or for like creating talismans. If I'm doing anything that requires a circle or some sort of division, anything that's dividing one thing from another, I always have that handy for that. Even if I'm taking like this was a piece of lignum vitae that I got at an exotic wood lumberyard. But in order to make it this shape, I had to have all of my chisels, my knives on the lathe. So, but there, of course, you also are using those chisels as your knife to create, because it shaves off all of the parts that you don't want for it. So even though I wasn't using like my ritual knife, I was using knives to create this wand. But yeah, that's definitely what that's what they're for. That's what I use them for.
So your approach to the blade is a very practical one. Me, for example, I followed Franz Barden's statement of how the sword or the dagger represents the authority of the magician. Haven't you noticed that, like, if you have a spirit that you're dealing with, that it's not being cooperative, a lot of times they'll tell you, point the sword at it. But the thing about it is this: you are not coming from your authority most of the time. You are coming from the authority of the divine will. They'll say that in a lot of evocation texts that if a spirit is not obeying, if they're goofing off, if they're being hostile, the immediate thing to do is take away the wand and point the sword or the dagger at it and tell it to behave. Because
Mhm.
this is kind of like saying that it is through the divine authority. Now, a lot of things I've noticed too is this. I don't know if you're familiar, but in Golden Dawn text, they actually recommend that you do the LBRP with the dagger. Did you notice that?
Mhm. Mhm.
And they actually say that you should use the lesser ritual of the hexagram with the wand. So going back at that, I wanted to ask you, what's your take? Why? Why would they say do the LBRP with the dagger? Now, guys, boys and girls, I know the answer. Okay, Wade and I talk about this every day, but it's just for us to educate you who are watching who may not know this. So why would we usually be recommended using the dagger for the LBRP?
Well, to bring it back to what you said first about authority, it's the wand and the sword and the staff are two different kinds of authority.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like when the Egyptian gods are always shown with the staff in one hand and the flail in the other.
Mm-hmm.
It's there's the gentle authority and then the ungentle authority in the other hand. So using the dagger for the LBRP is essentially to sort of cut loose all of the any sort of banishing work.
Yeah.
But specifically in the LBRP, it's to cut loose the um, the status quo, the solidity of the world that you're working of the area that you're working with. You cut that loose, and then you sort of make it fluid, and that makes it easier to shape. Sort of like when you're heating metal in a forge, it softens it, and
Yeah.
then you can bang it into the shape that you want.
Well, that's a good thing too. And like what you said earlier, that it defines. So if you're either banishing or you're invoking, and there's nothing better to you to do when doing that ritual than the actual sword, right? Because it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like how are we cutting this pie? How are we using this energy today? That's why a lot of noobs will call it the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, when in fact it's just the lesser pentagram ritual because it has two versions to it, which people may not be aware of. Now, the other question is then why do we use the wand for the hexagram ritual?
It's less of a. I mean, if you can use it, but you can use either one. But using the wand specifically for the hexagram ritual, for my money, that one is because it's macrocosmic instead of microcosmic,
That
and you're not really wanting to. It's more of an appeal than a command.
Yep.
You are working with the planets. You're not just like I'm going to cut Mars loose. Well, good luck with that. But you don't necessarily want to be using destructive power on external forces, if that makes sense.
Exactly. I completely agree with you on that. 2,000,000%. Because, like one thing, I really wish we could get Scott Michael Stenwick back on that because he has a really, really impressive article I'm going to send to you after this again about the operant field. Basically, it shows how he mixes and matches the pentagram ritual and the hexagram ritual. Like, example, if you're doing something just for yourself, you can do 2 pentagram rituals. If you're going to do something for yourself, but you want it to have a bigger input outwards, you can do a invoking pentagram, a banishing hexagram. He's got a really great and systematic way of explaining it. I think he's best at that. So Scott Michael Stenwick, shout out to you. Because
Well, that's the neat thing about those two rituals, specifically the pentagram ritual and the hexagram ritual, is you can use them in combination. You're like, okay, I'm going to, banish. I'm going to invoke. I'm going to go to the hexagram ritual. I'm going to invoke. And, then I'm going to go back to Earth, the pentagram. And I'm going to invoke. And I'm going to end by banishing Earth to sort of like, even everything back out and, allow this to manifest. But just using combinations of those two rituals, you can do a hell of a lot of work.
yeah, exactly. Gives me some ideas of things I want to try. And of course, you know what? Again, I'm going to turn off my camera because there are some books that I really want to share on this episode. They're really essential to maximizing your skills. Like there's not just the lesser ritual and the invoking ritual of the hexagram, the pentagram and hexagram. There are elemental versions and there are planetary versions. So it's kind of like how you flavor, but then that's going to be talking more about elemental and planetary magic, and that's a different topic. But let's talk next about the cup or the chalice. Inquiring minds want to know, how do we use this little thing?
Well, your cup is, it's like it's your intuition tool. A lot of times people will use it to scry in.
Mm-hmm.
That you can, use that to open a like a scrying portal.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also, one of the first rituals I ever taught my kids was how to, hi Heather, was how to drink the moon.
Oh, how do you do that?
Well, you just start out with a cup of water, regular. It's especially if you're out in the, if it's safe anymore. I don't know whether we don't have an EPA now, but if it's safe to get like natural water from a stream, and you hold it like just underneath, like you look up where the moon is, and you hold it just underneath, and you say your incantation. I drink of the moon. I drink of blah 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 blah. And then I drink of the moon, and you kind of pick it up in the cup.
The moon.
And then you drink it. And it was just one of the quick little spells that I taught my kids.
So you mean the moon, not the actual water in the lake, right? Because that will give you dysentery.
Yeah, well, back in my day, you could drink out of any stream that you came across in the woods because we had clean water by law.
Yeah, don't do that in the Philippines, boys and girls.
The
bad idea. Like idea. Okay, as a fellow mage, one way we can hack this is as you are like taking the moon in the glass. If you already have some purified water in there, I think that could be a good substitute. What do you think?
Oh yeah. If you bring even if you just bring a bottle of Perrier, and fill it up, that's perfectly fine.
All right, because like one thing I like to share with the idea of using the chalice, this can be used for glamour. Think about that. You want to be better looking. You want to be more appealing. You want more beauty. Remember, this has to do with the beauty element, but at the same time, this is also good for issues of the heart, emotions, feelings. So if you're doing magic that is directly involved with, like, you know what, Wade and I are having a bad time as friends, and I really want to restore this friendship, using the chalice and using water-based magic will help move the emotions, especially if they're stagnant. Okay, it's good for emotional magic, beauty magic, love magic as well. Water will be one of the best things to come with because, of course, the chalice is the vessel of the feelings, of the emotions. So one thing I tell people that if you're playing with emotional magic and you're not feeling the emotion, then you're not doing the magic right. Think about that. So if you're doing love magic, but you feel so desperate and ugly and she doesn't love me, man, I'm shit. What do you think you're putting in your chalice? You know what I mean?
Right.
Right? You know what I mean?
Now,
You're going to drink that. Good luck. Versus if you're like putting on love magic and you're watching a George Clooney movie in the background and feeling like something from Ocean's 11, like all girls want me and I'm a good man and I love women. Well, what do you think you're putting in your chalice? So
exactly.
The best thing about it, and it's not just love, huh? Like you could do straight up depression magic with the chalice. You could do rage magic with the chalice. Remember,
so that's the other thing you can use with the wand is you have, you can have your chalice in your left hand and the wand in your right hand, and you could bring, directly invoke whatever it is that you're wanting to into the water and drink it and basically invoke that into yourself. Or you could create, if you wanted to go ahead and create depression water.
That's
and have thing to do. Sad movies on, or what was that movie where the little boy and they follow this whole love story, the little boy and little girl, and then for absolutely no reason he gets stung to death by bees. Dude, who the fuck made that movie and thought it was entertaining?
That was My Girl with Macaulay Culkin.
Yeah. So anyway, so have that on. You just
God. No, here's one for you. For those of you in the 80s.
And do the whole thing,
depression water going. You just need one from the 80s, and it's one scene that every time it comes on, I change the channel, and that's Never Ending Story.
Oh God, with the horse! Oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Trust me,
Yeah.
it's a
Something like
beautiful
that.
movie. But up to now, I have not exposed my kids to it because of that one scene. That scene up to now, like it's funny because I got an '80s tarot deck, okay, and in that tarot deck, the Ten of Swords, the card of pain and depression and suffering, is that fucking scene.
Oh my
It's
God.
so perfect. It's like, ouch.
Yeah. And change the channel for 5 minutes. Yeah, kids, the horse ran away. And you come back. Okay. And we're moving on.
I'll digress to that. Do you know after that movie came out that movie got so much fan mail because of that scene? Worried that the horse
Yeah.
actually died, and that they had to do actually like a press release saying no, the horse is happy, and it was given to one of the main actors, and because that's one of those scenes that just gets you. It's
Oh,
worse
they
than
thought the actual horse died?
it did. They thought
Oh
because
my
they
God.
were kids, so they thought that the horse Artax died. You know what I mean?
Ha.
And they were like, "We're gonna kill the no, the horse is fine, and the actual horse that they used for the scene lived." So
So yeah. So anyway, so you use that, you make your depression water, and then now you've got this, you could bottle that up and keep that for whatever you want to use depression water for. But that's another thing with your cup. Cup is one of the magnetic tools
uh-huh.
as opposed to the dynamic tools for it, for basically directing your will into that.
Yeah, we actually have
But
to
yeah,
talk.
to charge it any way you wanted.
Me and Wade are kind of going off the handle here. Like, okay, if you're gonna use this for depression water, which you shouldn't, please don't. Make sure you cleanse this up the wazoo afterwards. Because the last thing you want is to use this cup after it's been charged with depression water. You know what I mean? Like, you're
Yeah.
like, well, I want to use this for my love life. Yeah, good luck there, Charlie. You know what I mean? So, whatever you put into this vessel, once you're done banishing, cleansing, the works, whatever tradition you follow, I'm not gonna. We'll talk about in the episode one of these days about cleansing. But remember, you have to delete whatever's in here. If not, it's gonna overlap the magic you're using it on in the future. All right, which brings us
Oh,
to the last.
what
Yeah.
before we get off the cup, one thing that you want to have is you need to keep your cup covered
Good one. Yeah. Why?
when you're not using it because it's a magnetic tool. It will draw things in, and especially if you have it just sitting on your altar, how things collect dust. Well, they collect a different kind of dust too.
That's
So
right.
if you have like a custom cover specifically for that, Ebony used to use a pair of panties that he would put over the cup.
Mm-hmm.
Because the symbolism there is obvious. But he would keep it covered specifically to keep other influences out.
Did Ebony ever come out with a basic ritual magic book?
No, he didn't. Well, he wrote a lot. I have copies of a lot of his stuff, but he never published anything.
I got it. Okay.
His ex-wife would probably, or his widow, I guess, would probably have all of his writings now.
Well, let's hope one day we could do like a compendium of Ebony's works because I'd love to read all about it. So brings us to the last tool, the pentacle. What's it for? How do we use it?
The pentacle is kind of like it's like your keyboard because you have everything laid out. I should have brought mine in from the other room.
Yeah.
You have everything laid out like a map. Like on the table where they have the map of the world and they have all their little pieces where they move the pieces around to show, in the war room in every movie in the world. Yeah. So that's your war room. That's your map.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a smaller version of the altar because the altar should have a similar design on it, or at least for similar purposes. It's kind of like if you had a bullseye on the wall. You know how they have like someone puts their boss's face on the dartboard.
Yep.
And they're throwing darts at it. Well, the pentacle would be your dartboard.
Basically, it's a physical manifestation.
Yeah, it's the backstop that your magic is kind of happening in front of.
Because I like to tell people when it comes to the pentacle, bro, it's your printer. Think about it.
Yeah.
Why is it your
Yeah,
printer?
it
Conceptualize your
goes, everything it happens on it, and then it go from there, it manifests into the world.
exactly. So like think of your book, Wade. That you have it, you use all of the tools. So you use the wand to infuel your idea of the book with passion. Then you use the cup to fill it with emotional connection to it. And then the dagger for the intellectual energy and how do I say, cordoning your ideas. But it's still here. It's still on the computer. The pentacle prints it and brings it to Malkuth. It makes it a physical manifestation of what you want. And this is a problem
Exactly.
people make nowadays. A lot of people nowadays try to do money magic using the pentacle. Now, if your money is in gold bars and jewels, then yes. But nowadays, money is predominantly what? Digital.
It's digital.
Exactly. So,
I mean,
money
the
magic,
vast bulk of wealth in the world doesn't actually exist.
exactly. You should actually be using your dagger and the air element because nowadays, like $1 million is not literally $1 million. It's just numbers and zeros in a bank account. So when it comes to using the pentacle, I tell people you're using this to literally deal with physical manifestation things. I want
Right.
to build a house. I want to lose weight. I want to create a statue. I want to grow a farm. Literal, you're bringing it into this world. If it's ideological, then it's not of this world. It's still in Yesod. It's still in the head. So anything that you're trying to bring into this world physically, you're going to use your printer, aka your pentacle. Do you agree with this sentiment?
Oh yeah, exactly. And especially when, since you talk about money magic, it's important to remember the end goal of it. Like if you say, "Oh man, I need a new car," so I gotta raise a bunch of money. Well, why not just get the car?
Mm,
Because when you get, as soon as you get, say, if you're like, okay, I need to get a new car because my old car is a hoopty and it's not working out. So you do your thing, you play the lottery, you win 10 grand. Immediately you're just like, oh, I'm gonna go buy 10,000 more lottery tickets. Well, instead of using it for the thing that you wanted, or once you have a pile of money, all of your friends want to be your friend. There's oh man, I should probably pay off my credit cards. You end up not getting the car
exactly.
because what you got was a vehicle to the item you wanted instead of getting the item you wanted.
Yeah, it's like in manifestation when people tell me that they want to manifest a lottery win. I'll always tell them that you don't have the juju for the lottery win because it's not the lottery win you want. You
Right.
actually want something else. It's just the lottery win is something that helps you get that. Like one dude went up to me and he wanted manifestation mentoring because he said, "Dude, I want six-pack abs. I want to be super fit." Like, okay, that's great. We can do that. Now I would always ask my students and clients, why? Why do you want this? Because you always have to dig as deep as possible. And then he said to me, he was like, "Well, dude, I want a girlfriend. I want the chicks." And I'm like, "All right, bro, I have a question. What's more important? The six-pack abs and the great body or the girlfriend? Because we can manifest a perfect body for you, but that does not mean you will get a girlfriend. I've seen people with perfect bodies that they're still single. Or we can help you get a girlfriend. You don't necessarily need the body. So what's more
Right.
important?" And it was, well, you know what? I'd
And
rather
once you get the 6 pack abs, you may end up with a boyfriend anyway. So
exactly. So he was like, you know what? I'm just gonna focus on the girlfriend. And less than 6 months later, I had a new girlfriend. So always know what you want. If you're using earth magic, I always tell this to people as well, using the pentacle. Of the four elements, the earth moves the slowest. Think about it. Moves the slowest. But when it
exactly.
moves, the world moves with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we got from Heather.
Yeah, let's
So
get
to invoke
down.
so to invoke political and social change, it would be wand and pentacle.
Nope. Wand and actually you would say wand, cup, and dagger.
Well,
Yes, said to invoke
that
political and
that was
social.
actually bringing me to another point.
Uh-huh.
Is is that sometimes I do use the wand directly on the pentacle. If I had, because I have a pentacle that's a sphere because the way it's designed is it wouldn't work on a flat disc
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of it wraps around. So I would end up using, I'd have, my pentacle, which is literally a representation of the world, and I would have the wand, that I'm drawing the connections between them, like moving power from one point to another
Mm-hmm.
to make the connections with them. But that's me. Sometimes I do use it directly on the pentacle, especially if it's something that I'm trying to go big with
Mm-hmm.
or to go fast with.
I'll
Is
throw
it's
down.
almost like a circuit board. Like, okay, I'm going to do from here to here to here
Mhm.
because this represents this represents this, but I want this to bridge between them.
I want
So
to
it's
throw
like you're
down.
drawing circuits. What's that?
That's a great idea. When you're using earth magic or you're using the pentacle, the smaller the scope, the faster the change. Think of it like this. If I were to say, I will literally say that the earth element I'm working with will only represent my neighborhood. That's going to be a lot faster to manifest than if I
Oh
were to
yeah,
say it would be the whole Philippines. So, in other
yeah,
words, when you're putting your parameters using the earth pentacle, it would always be smart for you to say, to start micro and go macro. Because if you're trying to say, this is world, well, you got all your life to wait for it. But if you say, this is my neighborhood, you could make a greater impact. So, for your
Well, when I
question,
say world, I'm meaning like the boundaries of the area that you're working with,
exactly.
whether
Some
it's a
people,
physical area or like a non-physical area. Like, so, okay, say work.
mhm,
In my particular work life, not necessarily my one job, but my work in general. You would have that would be the parameters of the your workshop, as it were, the scope of your work
so
would
yeah,
be the limits on your pentacle.
the advice stands true though. The smaller the scope, the faster the outcome. Because some
Exactly.
people would say, well, this pentacle will represent changing things on a global level. It's going to take a global amount of time. So, like when it comes
Yeah.
to Heather's question, remember, political and social change are ideologies, but they are usually fueled by emotions. And those emotions can also go with passions. But when you're saying to invoke change, how do we see that? What is the physical manifestation that because like we can have 100,000 people change, but there's no actual physical manifestation. Think about that. When Gandhi toppled India, the only physical manifestation was the British left. You see what I mean? But there was no literal physical manifestation of all of Britain falling. It was an ideological change. So for something like that, I would definitely go with air, earth, wind, and fire. No, air, water, and fire, because those are the three things that are going to get it done, especially if it's here and here. Now, example, if there
Yeah.
was an actual fortress, you know what I mean, of the British
Yeah.
Empire, then, and you wanted it to crumble, then you could attack it with earth magic. And Heather's asking another question. So, how do you create a radical global shift? Needs to be revolutionary and come fast like a lightning strike. True. Nowadays, we're in a time of electronic communication. So, that's a lot of I think the earth would be the last of our concerns there, because um everything is digital. So like the more people we reach digitally, the more people we tick off, the easier it is to change things. That's why things go viral.
See, the thing, what we're looking at right now is a situation in which the world is fucked because of a few and yet you unfuck it the same way it got fucked. Is that it's about controlling key people in specific places. You would have to work on key people in maybe not the same people, but people who can create change. So you would have to um, create an influence for those specific people, and a lot of it would be um, you'd have to work on strengthening independent media because a lot of the problems have come about because of people that are in control of the media. Because that when they're communicating like, oh, these years were so terrible. The last 4 years were so terrible. Everything was in the toilet. We actually had one of the strongest economies in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Through COVID and afterward. Everyone's complaining about the price of gas and and inflation and everything. We had some of the lowest inflation in the world. We had some of the cheapest gas in the world, and we are already the number one producer of oil. But the media kept harping on everybody. We have no oil anymore. They cut off all the pipelines. Oh, gases. Oh, eggs is this, and then gases, and everybody believed it because people don't want to actually look around at what's going on in the world. They're looking at what they're being told on TV, and so you would have to work on the media, on communicating with the people, getting people to see past the veil that's being put over their eyes and see what's happening.
Totally agree. So yeah, I mean that pretty much concludes the four elemental tools of the wizard, or the four tools, basic tools of the wizard. But there's a lot out there. I mean, especially if you're a Golden Dawn tradition, there's a lot of wands, a lot of staffs, a lot of cloaks, a lot of daggers, and
Lamans, so many lamans.
lamans, a lot
They,
of
yeah,
tables, a lot of sigils and stuff. And I've always have been of the belief that magic is subjective. So if it's something you feel is really necessary, then by all means spend good time making it happen or creating it. Like Frater Ashin Chasan has some really amazing custom created magical tools. You might want to check him out. He was a guest on our second season. But if you can also create it on your own, it makes it more subjective. But at the end of the day, remember, boys and girls, that all of these things don't have the magic. They just amplify the magic inside of you. So with that being said, huh?
Something we didn't cover was the robe.
Oh yeah, the robe. We can throw that down. The
That's
robe.
a whole nother thing.
Yeah, a whole different episode for that one, but that's a fun one and that's an essential one. So we'll talk about that in another episode. But that being said, it's another episode of Magic.tv presents. Take care, you guys, and see you guys next episode. Don't go anywhere, Wade.